Welcome to Unified Infrastructure Manager, or UIM, Logmon Probe Training for Administrators. In this video, we'll take a look at the Logmon Probe user interface. The Logmon Probe has three main interfaces: Infrastructure Manager, also called IM, Admin Console 2 or AC2, and Monitoring Configuration Services or MCS. We will be covering only the first two, as MCS adds another level of complexity that is beyond the scope of this training. This slide shows the Logmon probe installed on a robot in Infrastructure Manager, or IM. We can see the probe is green and it has a port and a PID, which means it's active and working. We also see the version number in the screenshot is 3.90. I will go through all of the setups in both Infrastructure Manager and AC2. However, when I do the examples and use cases, I will be using the Infrastructure Manager version only. To open the probe GUI, you can double-click on the Logmon probe name. Here we see the Admin Console 2 or AC2 interface. We can see the same basic information on this screen as well. However, rather than double-clicking on the Logmon probe to open the configuration screen, you have to choose the configuration option from the stacked three dots outlined in red in the screenshot. The Setup tab in the Logmon probe has an Activate checkbox that is checked by default. If this is unchecked and the probe is restarted, you will see that the probe will stay deactivated in Infrastructure Manager. This is one of the few probes that has the ability to deactivate the entire probe from inside the GUI interface. Generally speaking, for production, we want to leave the log level as low as possible. This would mean at log level 3 or less. Log level 3 to log level 5 will be required when working with support. Support generally recommends a log size to be set to at least 25,000 kilobytes. When testing your setup, setting the log level to 5 can be very useful. The format interval is used when during a scan of a target the end parameter is not met. If this case happens and you set the format interval above 1, it will check the next X number of interval times to try and find the ending parameter for the format rule to continue the process. By default, this is set to 1, so it will not be utilized. The run command threads is used to limit the number of commands a watcher rule can execute when an expression is matched. This is per watcher rule and per profile. It should be noted, if you are not executing commands or more than one command per watcher, then this should be set to 1. Setting this to a higher number can cause resources issues even when the commands are not executed. An example, the value is set to 10 and the watcher rule expression matches 12 times in the interval. Here the probe executes the command 10 times. The command is defined in the run command on the match section in the standard tab of the watcher rule. The output encoding defines the character encoding to generate alarms and QoS messages when the probe is deployed in a non-English locale. The probe also uses the encoding to identify the file name that is specified in the monitoring profile. System encoding specifies the encoding of the system where the probe is deployed. These are used for internationalization of the probe, which will be covered in a later training session. Enable file missing/open alarm. This option generates an alarm if the monitored log file is missing or is not readable by the probe. This option also clears the alarm in the subsequent interval after the probe reads the file. This option should not be used when using regular expressions in the file name or when using wildcards in the file name. The clear alarm on restart generates a clear alarm when the probe restarts and successfully reads a log file that was missing earlier. Run as user allows you to define the user credentials to access directories and files on the host or network system when running commands. The username, including domain name, defines the username for the credentials in the format of domain/username. The password defines the password for the credentials. The order for the setup is a little different in the Admin Console 2, and the Activate checkbox is missing, but other than that, the information is the same. The Logmon probe allows you to collect quality of service metrics, or QoS. By default, QoS gathered will be placed into a general QoS with the name of QoS_Logmon_ variable. You can, however, set up custom QoS messages definitions to easily be able to report on QoS you are collecting and provide more detailed description of the information gathered. In the setup section of the Logmon probe is a quality of service tab where custom QoS can be set up in order to be used with different watcher sections, which we will cover in more detail when we do examples. When setting up a custom QoS definition, we will need to specify the following. The QoS name will be the name of the QoS used for reporting. This cannot contain spaces. For the QoS description, enter any additional information for the QoS that you would like. This will be useful for people creating reports, so this information should be descriptive. The QoS unit and units abbreviation selects an appropriate unit and its abbreviation for the QoS you are defining. These are predefined and cannot be changed. The default is bytes. You can use a drop-down to see the other options available. The Has Maximum Value checkbox and field allow you to specify the maximum permissible value for the QoS definition. If a value is returned that is greater than the maximum value, the QoS value will be set to the value created here. The As Expected checkbox allows you to generate the QoS message according to the expected value set for that variable. If this expected value is not present, an alarm will be sent. If not selected, the QoS message on variables are sent after a specific time interval. We see the same information here on the QoS setup screen for the admin console too. I will leave the screen here for a few seconds so you can review the layout. When you click on a new profile, you will be required to provide a name for the new profile. As this may be used as part of the alarm message, I try to make the name descriptive and unique. Once this is done, you'll be brought to the Profile General tab. By default, when you create a new profile, it will come up as active. This is the checkbox next to the new profile name that was created on the left-hand window. The first field on the Profile General tab is the Operation Mode drop-down. As of this writing, there are 7 options in the Operation Mode drop-down. 4 of the modes are used when the monitoring targets are files such as application logs. These modes are as follows. The Cat mode instructs the probe to read the entire file from beginning to end each time the profile is executed. This is best used for testing only. The Full mode instructs the probe to read the file from beginning to end only when the file is modified. A file is considered as modified when the content of the file is updated. The Full-time mode instructs the probe to read the file from beginning to end only when the file is modified. A file is considered modified in this instance when the modification time of the file is updated. The Updates mode instructs the probe to scan the file for the last end of mark that was placed when the file was modified. The probe uses the end of file, the file size, and the file modification time to determine modifications. In most cases, when using Logmon in production, you will want to use the Updates mode only. If you use one of the other modes and the target files are large, a problem with high CPU usage may be seen. The Command mode option is used to instruct the probe to scan the output of a console command. The Queue mode option instructs the probe to scan the message of a CAUIM queue. The queue is configured in the CAUIM hub where the probe is deployed. The probe scans the message text and line string fields in the message for matches. The URL mode option instructs the probe to scan the content of the web page, which is accessible at a given URL. The URL option requires the URL response probe be installed on the same robot as the Logmon probe. The next field is where you enter the file location, command, UIM queue name, or URL that will be your target for monitoring. The field name will change depending on the mode chosen above. The file encoding field is used to change the encoding expected in the target source for internationalization. When using the Updates mode, you can enable the Set File Read Position options. The initial file read position defines the start position from where the probe starts monitoring the file. The value can be the start of the file or the end of the file. The resume file position defines the position from where the monitoring is resumed if the probe or the profile is restarted. The value can be the last read line or the end of file. If you want to collect quality of service or QoS information for reporting, then you will check the box for collecting QoS. To send an alarm when a match is seen, you need to make sure that Generate Alarm is checked. This is done by default for you. This should be unchecked only if all you want to do is generate QoS for this watcher profile. If you want the alarm message to go to a special UIM queue with a custom subject header, you can enable this with the Send Message using a specific subject checkbox and field. This will cause the alarm message to use this custom UIM message type rather than the standard alarm message type. This is not commonly used. To make sure you do not flood the UIM environment or other third-party integrations such as a service desk with alarms, it is suggested to set the maximum alarm count to 10 or less. This will limit the number of alarms that the watcher rule can generate in a single pass. By default, the maximum alarm level is set to critical. Usually this does not need to be changed from the default. If the maximum alarm limit is reached, you can set a custom alarm message text to be sent for this event. In any alarm message field, you can free type a message or type in a $sign and see the variables that can be used to create the message. By default, these are profile name, file name, watcher, and any custom variables that have been set up. The bottom section changes based on the mode type changes for file and command. Q and URL mode do not have anything for this section. When using the mode for files, you can set the probe to alarm if the file is missing and auto clear the missing file when the alarm for the probe restarts. When using the mode for command, you can set the command timeout and set an alarm if the timeout is reached. When creating the new profile with Admin Console, you select the three dots next to the hostname on the right and then choose the type of profile you want to create. This cannot be changed after the profile is created, so you will need to create a cat profile for testing and then an update profile for production for files. This is due to the need for different screens for each profile type. Once you choose the type of profile you want to create, you must fill in the profile name. At this point, you have a few options that can be changed, or these can be changed later, except for the mode. After filling in the name, you are taken to the General tab as you were in the Infrastructure Manager operations. On the Format Rules tab, you can create multiple format rules if your target source has multiple groupings of lines you need to treat as one entry. If all the information is only on a single line, then the format rules can be bypassed and you can go directly to the Watcher Rules setup. You will notice in the context menu, if you have multiple format rules, you can change the order in which they are listed, which will change the order they are executed by the probe. The start expression box is usually a regex statement to identify the starting line to consider as a block. You can choose a blank line as a start for a new block if your target source lays out that way as well. You then can choose the ending expression. This can be a regular expression, a number of lines, or even a blank line depending on how your target source is laid out. When we get to our use case examples, we will look at a regular expression statement. When using the Admin Console and setting up a Format Rule tab, you do not have the option to change the order of the format rules as you do in the Infrastructure Manager screens. The Watcher Rules tab is where most clients will spend most of their time. This tab is used to match the expression in your target source. You can have multiple Watcher rules in a single profile in case you need to check for multiple conditions and send alarms in QoS based on different information. As with the format rules, you can move these profiles up and down and change the order they are executed by the probe. The match expression is used to create a regular expression to match information in your target source. In UIM, when using regex, the application requires that you start and end the regex statement with forward slashes. When testing in external regex tools, you will not use these, but need to remember to add them when implementing them inside UIM. Otherwise, the information is treated as a simple text match. The next field, Message to Send on Match, is used to create an alarm message to send when a match is found. Again, you can put a $sign in the field and see the variables that can be used in the message field. The Message Severity field allows you to change the level of the alarm from informational to critical based on the requirements for this Watcher rule. It should be pointed out that in order to capture QoS information, a match must be found. The value of the match is converted to an integer and stored in QoS variable if a number is matched. If text is found, the QoS will be saved as 0. QoS information can only be numeric. Using an external file for a regular expression match is outside the scope of this training, but you can see the documentation for further details and limitations on using this feature. You can specify a command to run when a match is found. An example of this might be to restart a process if a failed message is matched. You need to provide the path to the binary or script and any command line arguments needed for the command to function properly. You will need to properly test the command to see what an appropriate timeout is. Usually support suggests setting this to 20 seconds or less. The value here must be less than the check interval field for this profile. If you choose, you can set the alarm on first match only checkbox at the bottom of the screen. This will limit the number of alarms to 1 even if multiple matches are found. We can see an extra field here on the Admin Console Watcher screen that is not on the Infrastructure Manager GUI. The field separator listed here is for use with the variables, which we will cover next. You can create and configure custom variables to use with alarms and QoS messages. The variables can retrieve text from the log file and use it in both probe messages. You can create multiple variables for each watcher rule to pull different information out of the matched target. The first thing you have to do is give the variables a name. By default, the system will call the variables created var, var2, var3, etc. These can be changed as desired to make them more descriptive, which support strongly suggests. Next, you have to tell the probe probe where in the match target string the information you are looking for is located. The source line allows you to define the beginning of the match to extract the variable value. This option is used when format rules and a multi-line block are being matched. The text block allows you to specify the entire text block as a variable. The content is used without truncating any control characters, and all other fields on the screen are disabled. The source from position allows you three options: column, character position, and match expression. The column option defines the starting column in the target source to retrieve the variable value. This is used in conjunction with the field separator. By default, white space is treated as a column separator. Multiple white spaces together are treated as a single separator. The character position defines the starting character position in the source line to retrieve the variable value. The match expression sets the variable value to whatever is matched in the target source from the expression on the Watcher tab. The source to position allows you to specify three options to determine where to end collecting information for this variable: ignore to column, or to end of line. The ignore to ignores the to position and extracts the entire content from the starting position to the end of the log file. The to column option specifies the end column position to retrieve the variable value. The to end of line option retrieves the variable value to the end of the line of the starting position. If the matched value is numeric, you can set a threshold to check in the expected value area and set a numeric evaluation. If the match value is text, you can do a check to see if it is an expected value or not. An example would be if your match is looking for a status in a log, you expect a started text but you want an alarm when failed is shown. Setting this value would allow you to match on both but only set an alarm on a failed status. With the admin console, you have to select the variable you want to edit in the top grid, and then the details will be displayed in a lower window. The admin console combines the source from and source to into a single box, and you choose the type in a drop-down box. On the Advanced tab, you can limit the Watcher rule to a single format rule if your profile has multiple format rules set up. If a specific format rule is not set, the Watcher rule should be checked against all existing format rules in this profile. This could cause unnecessary processing. You can tell the Watcher rule to abort all following Watcher rules by checking the Abort on Match checkbox in the Advanced tab. The match on every run enables the probe to match values for the specified format rule each time a target source is scanned. For example, some applications write heartbeat messages to a log. If a match is found, the probe generates alarms as configured in the message to send on match. If the match is not found, the probe generates the alarm that is configured on the standard tab. The alarm message to send on match allows the same formatting and variables as other alarm message fields we have seen. You can also select the severity of the Watcher match alarm. The Admin Console Advanced Setup section is the same as the Infrastructure Manager. I will leave this screen up for a few seconds for review. You can configure the profile to generate quality of service messages for the number of matches by the Watcher rule. You can also configure QoS messages for variables created on the Variable tab. You must use different QoS definitions for Watcher and variables. Using the same QoS definition instructs the probe to generate the same QoS multiple times. The count matches allows you to enable QoS messages on the number of matches found by the Watcher rule. You can then set the following values for the count message QoS. The QoS name allows you to select the QoS definition to use. You can also select Add New QoS Definition to specify a custom QoS. The QoS description displays a short description of the QoS message. The QoS target defines the QoS target where the QoS value is measured. The default is profile name, period, Watcher name. Select the checkbox next to the variable name in the QoS on Variables table to activate the QoS generation for the variable. The table lists the variables that are defined on the Variable tab in the Watcher rule. You can optionally right-click on the variable and select Edit and then set the QoS variables. You will need to update the following information to configure the QoS message for each variable: the name, the QoS target. Each variable should have its own custom QoS definition. In Admin Console, the top window allows you to select the QoS variable you want to configure, and the bottom window allows you to configure the details for the record selected. You can configure the subsystem properties for alarms in the Alarms tab. These fields are used to control alarm correlation and suppression in the NAS probe. You can also specify thresholds to generate alarms for count of matches on the screen. It is recommended if you have more than one watcher rule that these fields be filled in with the suppression key information for each watcher rule. If this is not done, a suppression key of blank will be used, and this will cause multiple watcher alarms to be suppressed and the alarm count increased in NAS instead of having separate alarms. Also, a note is to avoid using underscores in the suppression key, as this can cause unexpected behavior. The source field defines the alarm source that is used as a sender of the alarm. The value can be used to impersonate the host system. If you have enabled QoS generation for count matches in the Qos tab, you can then set a threshold alarm by setting the following information. The operator defines the operator for the count matches variable. The threshold defines the threshold value for the count matches variable. If you would like to set an alarm if the number of watcher rule matches breaches a certain number, you can specify a threshold value to generate a pattern match alarm. When the specified threshold value is breached, an alarm will be sent. Pattern match threshold is only applicable in the update's operating mode. You can also set the severity and message to send the pattern match threshold here. As of Logmon Probe version 3.91, you can now set the section for variable exceeded alarms. The minimum match count defines the minimum number of times the threshold breach for all defined variables must occur for the probe to generate the alarm. The alarm text defines the alarm message text sent when the match count threshold is breached. The severity defines the severity of the variable exceeded alarm. The probe will generate the alarm only with the defined severity. If you do not define any severity, the probe sends the default message defined in the standard section. The suppression key defines a suppression key to avoid multiple instances of the same alarm. The variable exceed alarm is applicable for the updates and command modes only. Setting an alarm disables the watcher rules. The same setup can be done on the admin console screens. I will leave this up for a few seconds for review. You can configure exclude rules to define text or expressions to be excluded from monitoring. The probe ignores these text blocks or lines where the excluded text or expression exists. You can define more than one exclude rule. As of probe 3.92, the exclude rules do not work with URL monitoring. The exclude rules are also not used by most clients. To activate, you right-click and do New to create a new exclude rule. You must give the exclude rule a name and check the box to activate it. Next, you will fill in the expression to match the target source that will cause the exclusions. Each format block or line of input is checked to see if the expression entered in the exclude expression field is found. If a match occurs, the line or block is ignored and does not trigger any action. You can set up the regex matching from an external file on this tab as well. Again, this is beyond the scope of this training session. The same setup can be done on the admin console screen as shown here. For more detailed information about this product, click the information bubble in the top right corner to load the product page. From there, you can visit product documentation, support, communities, and see the learning paths available.